The role of self-awareness in personal growth and self-improvement. Let's get right into this. So this is absolutely essential for making change to yourself. Really, self-awareness is a skill that has to be developed. You actually have to intentionally and actively cultivate the qualities that are associated with self-awareness. Now, I just got a quick paragraph that I got to read to you. But before I do that, I want you to take a look at the board. And I have a whole bunch of benefits, traits, and practices that are associated with self-awareness. So this stuff should all work to develop a very clear picture of how self-awareness is important to personal growth and basically why you should develop it if you want to. So self-awareness plays a crucial role in personal growth and self-improvement by helping individuals understand their thoughts, emotions, values, and behaviors, and how they impact their own lives and the lives of others. That one's actually really big, the lives of others. This understanding can lead to greater insight into one's own strengths and weaknesses and allow individuals to identify areas for growth and change. Furthermore, self-awareness can help individuals make more conscious, deliberate decisions and take proactive steps to improve themselves and their lives. Overall, self-awareness can lead to greater personal fulfillment, healthier relationships, and a more fulfilling life. I want to talk about more conscious, deliberate decisions. That one is really important because a lot of how we make decisions is not very conscious and it's not very deliberate. It's very mechanical and robotic and actually driven by a lot of our underlying repressed emotions like fear, shame, guilt, anger, deficiency, lack, frustration, boredom, things like this. All these underlying emotions that we like to avoid actually still pull our strings in many ways. Now I want to talk about some of the benefits really of actually developing self-awareness. And this is one of those things that isn't very obvious until you begin doing it. Like it's obvious that, if you weightlift, you'll get larger muscles because you just look at people who do it and you can see it for your own eyes. But self-awareness is more of an implicit thing. It's something that's happening inside of you and it's not very explicit. It's not happening outside of you, really. It's more so your own subjective experience. So personal insight is the first one I have on the board right here. And this is one of the most interesting ones. So this has to do with individuals gaining insight into how their own thoughts work, how their own emotions work, how their own values work, and really what all this stuff is and what their behaviors are. And really this leads to a greater understanding of how you actually work. And how you actually work is not something that you just already know. You don't start life knowing how you work, what your personality is, preferences, biases, likes, dislikes, things like this. This has to be continuously discovered. And really, just by living, you'll discover quite a bit, literally just by being alive. But that's not enough. That is just not enough. You need to actively investigate the workings of your own mind to develop crystal clear clarity and true self-awareness. If you aren't intentionally and actively doing that, you simply have really just not very clear insights into how you work and why. You just don't have much self-awareness, and overall, really, you just lack clarity. That's kind of how that one works. So make sure that when it comes to self-awareness, this isn't like some fluffy topic where we can all like hold hands and sing Kumbaya and skip and look at rainbows, but notice that there's a lot of practical hands-on things that you actually have to be doing in order to notice some mechanisms of your own mind and how they got there and why and what their purpose is, things like that. And I'll talk more about how to actually practice when I get to the practices section of the video. Another good thing is decision making. So by understanding your own values, beliefs, behaviors, emotions, thoughts, instincts, things like that, you can actually make more intentional and really just more deliberate decisions that actually are in alignment with you, your personality, your upbringing, your interests, your values, all this kind of stuff. You can actually uncover what it feels like and what it means for you to be authentic. And I'm going to make a video on authenticity. And I want to very clearly state that authenticity is probably not something that you are doing. In fact, you are probably very inauthentic the vast majority of the time when you relate to people. And this is not an insult or like a kind of attack, but we have so many defenses, emotional defenses, that we have accumulated and created in order to protect ourselves over the years and especially in childhood. And unless these defenses get actively investigated and dropped away, we are not acting from our authentic self. We are acting from a defensive mechanism. Our reactivity, for example, our manipulative tactics that we don't even like to admit to or even notice are there. So really, authenticity has a lot to do with discovering the emotional blocks within ourselves and being able to really heal those parts of ourselves and feel vulnerable, really. Like a lot of the removing of defenses leaves you with a sense of openness, spaciousness, and vulnerability. Because without those defenses, you are vulnerable, and even with those defenses, you are vulnerable. And really engaging in the world, relating to people, relating to yourself in a more defensive way, it's helpful sometimes, but it's not very pleasurable. It doesn't feel very good. I'll just leave it at that. There's a difference between being cautious and being scared, really, being fearful. And a lot of our defensive mechanisms are not done out of caution. They're done out of underlying terror, really. Not even fear, I mean terror. Like a repressed terror that you've had inside of you since you were a child, but you just couldn't handle this emotion, these emotions, because you were too young to. So really, our authenticity is not a given, really. Like you aren't just, I'm just angry. That's just who I am. And I'm angry. I'm an angry person. But really, if we investigate why that anger is there, what are the beliefs associated with that anger? Are they really true? Are they really honest about you? Why, what are they actually doing? If we begin to look at this and really investigate it, we find out that a lot of this stuff we've adopted from other people who've adopted from other people, or they're manipulations, or they're just false beliefs. And the thing about authenticity is that it implies truth, it implies honesty, it implies how you actually are, what you actually are. And manipulations and self-deception and personal dishonesty and overall being scared and overly fearful, this is all more inauthentic. By scared and overly fearful, I mean more so acting out of our defensive mechanisms. So authenticity is not a simple thing. It's not this airy-fairy, fluffy thing. When we question, how can I be more authentic, we actually have to look at the blocks inside of us that prevent us from being fully authentic. And there's a lot of them inside of you, inside of me. Moving on, we have clarity. So self-awareness can increase clarity by helping people to understand their strengths and weaknesses. And it also gives you a deeper sense of acceptance for who you are, which this clarity is almost synonymous with confidence, but I don't mean like, see, confidence is such a corny word. Whenever we think of like a guy standing up like this, but really, the most confident people are not men who can stand like this and, like a lot of that stuff's an act. The most confident people are usually the ones who are most clear about who they actually are and are most open to themselves. And really, overall, they have a strong ability to actually accept and love themselves. So this is a confidence that is coming forth from a deeper sense of clarity about who you are and why you are the way that you are. Not so much because you put on some cool shades, bought a leather jacket, bought a Mustang, and you did some sit-ups and now you got some rock hard abs. Confidence isn't built in that way. Confidence is built through self-awareness, through becoming more conscious, through actually investigating the blocks to feeling secure. Because we all have deep blocks inside of us that are related to feelings of insecurity that we're too scared to even admit that they exist or even investigate. And a lot of those underlying emotions are the actual blocks to being genuinely confident. Moving on, better relationships. That's a big one. So self-awareness improves relationships by increasing your empathy, communication skills, and emotional intelligence. They can get you to realize when you're being reactive, when you're projecting your beliefs onto a person, when you are being too rigid, when you aren't giving them your attention. And really, you can even notice the blocks in your relationships to people that screw up your connection to them by, increasing your self-awareness. You can just watch the things you do that screw up your connection to a specific person, whether it's, coworker, mom, dad, significant other, whoever it is. Now, obviously, different relationships have different kinds of connections. And it's very important to actually realize that we do a lot of things that are just blatantly manipulative in our relationships, and we do a lot of things that just sever the connection between us and the person that we are relating to. Another good one is greater resilience. So this has a lot to do with your ability to handle stress and manage situations that can create stress. So self-awareness helps you to do that basically because you are more aware of your thoughts, you're more aware of your emotions, you're more aware of your instincts, you're more aware of your reactivity. And this awareness actually equips you with the necessary skills to handle this kind of stuff. And by words like handle and manage, I do not mean, like you got to get in there and like fix it with a screwdriver and a hammer. You got to handle it, manage it, push on it, pull on it. Really, this kind of stuff, it's more about regulating, it's more about witnessing, it's more about actively feeling what's there, it's about getting in touch with your body, it's about actually appreciating the emotions that arise inside of you and listening to them and noticing that like they are communicating something to you. It's not about this brute force masculine method of like you handle the situation and you fix it with a screwdriver and and a hammer like there's a problem that needs to be solved. It's more about coming into a deeper sense of connection and harmony with your actual self. So that's really what I mean by like handling stress and managing difficult situations, because words like manage and handle imply control a little bit too much. And really, a lot of self-awareness, and when you're really self-aware, there's almost like a surrendering into the natural flow of reality that seems to just start to happen. When you become more conscious, when you become more self-aware, you begin to realize very profound things about yourself that can be almost completely indescribable. And really, this notion of control that we have isn't as real as we'd like to think it is. The way that we sort of relate to stressful situations or believe that we have some kind of free will over them in many cases isn't as real as we actually like to think it is. A lot of how we handle things or manage things are really done out of pre-existing conditioning that has been controlling us for however many years, 5, 10, 15 years. And that what we think we are, what we think our authentic self is, what we think our own free will is actually just the byproduct of conditioning that has really piled up over the years due to things like fear, anger, worry, anxiety, things like this. Another good one is personal accountability. This one is absolutely huge. This has a lot to do with taking responsibility for the actual things that you're doing in your life, how they affect yourself, and how they affect the people around you. So really this has a lot to do with understanding the impact that you have on the larger system around you, whether it's within your family, within your workplace, within your economy, within your business, within your relationship, within yourself. You begin to actually get that the things you do have impacts on a significant amount of other things, and that those impacts might not be very positive impacts all the time. In fact, a lot of the things you do are probably going to have very low consciousness, or really just kind of crappy impacts, to be honest. A very obvious one could be like shopping at Walmart, or buying clothes, for example, that are made by, let's say, children in sweatshops somewhere in some third world country. Obviously we know it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not having a good impact on the world, on these people, but we don't really like to actually consciously think about that. Like, we don't like to actually sit down and consciously think about what we're actually doing when we're doing that thing. We like to tune it out, and our mind really just doesn't care. It's like, oh, I'm buying a shirt. That's really what's happening. You walk into a store, oh, I'm buying a shirt. You don't really see what you're actually doing. You don't see that, you don't care about what business you're supporting and the possible unethical things that they're doing, and how you are actually supporting those unethical things by shopping there or even working for them. So that's an interesting one. Or how your reactivity affects your relationship, and how it makes the people around you feel, how it ruins connections. So increasing personal accountability is very important, actually, for making lasting behavioral changes, because if we don't take a sense of responsibility for our actions, we're kind of screwed. We kind of just blame or leave it up to fate or whatever. But really, we have a deep superpower as human beings, which is to just become self-aware and actually notice patterns in us that are automatically playing out. They are automatically playing out, and change them to something that is more functional and healthy and more conscious, more alivening, more exuberant. It makes you a more happy, vibrant human being, more energized, more in love with life, more connected to life, more connected to the people around you, more motivated, more productive, more whatever. All that stuff that we all love so much. Coping. So better coping skills. Self-awareness can improve people's ability to handle their triggers, reactivity, emotions, stress, things like that. We've talked about that a little bit, and I'll be talking about that later on, especially with a lot of these practices. I'm going to talk about reactivity. I'll have a whole episode on reactivity in the future, I bet, and how to really handle reactivity, how to really relate to it. So this is not a simple thing. Our reactivity is actually pointing to very deep underlying psychological and emotional wounds within us that are driving behavior. When you're reactive, you're not really in control. You're just reacting. You don't actually have a sense of personal responsibility, self-awareness, control, anything like this. You just kind of feel it's like something has automatically taken you over. And really your ability to have an informed decision, a conscious decision, have deliberate intention in what you're doing, this is wiped clean, it's gone, and instead some old conditioning has like taken you over, and you're kind of just like a zombie to it. Moving on, Increased personal growth, of course. So self-awareness can lead to personal growth by helping individuals identify areas for improvement and take proactive steps to develop and grow. And this requires honesty. And I have a whole playlist on honesty. I recommend watching a lot of those videos. They're very good. Self-awareness and really growth has to be done in an honest and truthful way. When we have flaws or something like that, let's say we have problems relating to people, reactivity, emotional issues, it's important to actually be honest that they exist. And just to say like, oh, I have this problem. I get reactive when this happens. Even when you're in a state of reactivity, as soon as you can, just admit to yourself that you're being reactive. This kind of observation, this kind of honesty, this kind of clarity is very transformative. Noticing how you feel and saying, I feel sad, I feel reactive, I feel anxious, I feel frustrated. This kind of direct observation into yourself and this, clarity, stating what's happening to yourself, this honesty there's nothing that it's a good way to state this, it has to transform you. That's just like a cold hard fact of this. If you are self-aware and have deep personal honesty, it will transform you. If you actually care enough about uncovering a lot of your deception, a lot of your emotional issues, a lot of the blocks to personal growth, a lot of the blocks to connecting with people deeply, a lot of the blocks to being productive and being motivated and finding the things you love in life, if you actually honestly and sincerely investigate this stuff, there's no other option other than to transform you. Moving on, I have traits. So the first one is emotional intelligence. People who are emotionally intelligent, very self-aware, people who are very self-aware are often more emotionally intelligent. So people who are self-aware typically have better abilities in understanding and managing their emotion, and also have greater empathy for others. So that's a whole other video. I'll be talking about emotional intelligence some other time. Moving on to confidence. Self-awareness can lead to a greater sense of self-assurance as individuals are better able to understand what is authentic to them, their values, their beliefs, what they truly think, and what they actually feel. And it goes hand in hand with the confidence I was talking about when I was talking about clarity, because this is not macho man confidence, Brad Pitt in Fight Club, like a lot of people think confidence is, but it's actually, it's real honesty. It's born out of clarity, integrity, truth, and basically just personal honesty. It's what's actually true about you, and you're able to accept it and actually love it. Whereas a lot of, like I just said earlier, a lot of what people think confidence is or how it works is just not true, really. We have to investigate the blocks we have to being truly confident. We all have very deep insecurities, very, very deep-rooted fears, terrors, really. And unless we can be honest about that, then we're actually not confident enough to admit our overall lack of confidence and security in life. Moving on, mindfulness. This is about remaining with the present moment and what is presently happening. And I want to say something, that all of this stuff is all interconnected. So like mindfulness and confidence are really going hand in hand, because when you are fighting against the present moment, you're struggling, you're resisting it, there's not a lot of confidence. You're kind of anxious, you're worried, you're struggling, you're fighting. You don't feel secure in those moments. Whereas when you're, when you're in the present moment, you are actually paying attention to it. You're in a sense of harmony and connection with it. You actually feel more confidence and more security in that moment. So mindfulness has a lot to do with being present in the moment and paying attention to one's thoughts and emotions, which can lead to a greater sense of peace, security, and really overall well-being. Once again, responsibility, like I talked about, it increases a person's awareness, really, in how they are impacting the world around them. Moving on to adaptability, because I already talked about responsibility enough. Maybe I'll make another video in the future about how responsibility works, things like that. Adaptability, so by understanding your own thought patterns, your own emotions, your own behaviors, you will actually be able to adapt to situations in a much more flexible and fluid way, and really be able to just overcome the possible challenges that that situation brings you. So new situations, really new, and really just change in general gets a lot of people scared. Change is really a form of death to you. When we change you, the you that you presently are has to die and be replaced with something else. And that is usually not interpreted by your emotional system and your mental system very well. Even though you might know that, okay, a change like going to the gym more might be healthy for you or eating better. But there's so many parts of you that are so invested in your current patterns because you find a sense of security in them. And really, by being more self-aware, you become, of course, more adaptable, and this helps you to embrace changes in a lot faster and in a lot more of a fluid way, in a lot more of a connected way, instead of a more rigid and disconnected way. And really what I mean by connected is you're more in harmony with what's presently happening. Like I said, all these traits all kind of work together to create something larger than the sum of each part. Moving on to problem solving. Self-awareness helps people to identify and address personal challenges leading to greater problem solving skills. So personal challenges, really, if you want a personal challenge, I would recommend striving to be as honest as you possibly can with yourself. And the best place to start with that is by recognizing that you are not honest with yourself. Let's start by recognizing all the ways in which we are completely dishonest with ourselves, the ways we avoid ourselves, distract ourselves, things like this. I have a video called What Creates Personal Dishonesty. You might want to check that one out because it's going to be very insightful for developing honesty. I just point out a lot of the blocks. Another good one is strong connections and just strong relationships in general. So self-awareness increases empathy, communication skills, and emotional intelligence, which are absolutely essential in being able to connect with another person in a very deep way and to continuously cultivate and deepen that connection, because there's different levels of depth with different connections. Now I want to get on to some practices that you can implement in your life that are actually going to bring this stuff about. Not just have you, thinking about it, oh, it's cool, we can all think about it all day, but actually you need to practice stuff. So right away, meditation, mindfulness, this one is huge. This is probably the best one for becoming more self-aware and overall emotionally intelligent. This is just about sitting down and directly observing yourself, sitting down and studying yourself, actually taking an interest in what's happening inside of you, like being interested about how your body feels, what you're thinking, what a thought is, what an emotion is, what it's doing, and just directly observing it, noticing the tension in your body and releasing it. So really, mindfulness is insanely important, and this is basically this is almost undebatable, really. This is for really maybe 90% of the population, absolutely essential. There's going to be some rare people who are just kind of gifted, I bet, who don't need it. I'd recommend not putting yourself in that, category. I'd recommend giving that a sincere try. I think the first time I meditated some years ago, I hated it. Like I couldn't sit there for like 30 seconds. It was so hard because I was so used to being distracted and stimulated and here, there, and there, and there. My thoughts would pull me away. And now I can do retreats entire weeks, actually, and be okay, and it's fantastic. So when you're meditating, you want to notice your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations. And you want to actively feel and actively probe and just become as aware as possible of what is actually happening inside of you in the present moment. Just direct observation. The next one is journaling. So writing down what happens, writing down your thoughts, feelings, experiences, and basically improving your ability to reflect upon them. And this really helps to give you a bunch of insight into how you work and what your inner subjective world is and how it's functioning. And really overall, this is just a solid practice for developing very sharp clarity around how you actually work. And I want to say that it's important to journal based off direct observation. So when it's about self-awareness, obviously you can write down whatever the hell you want, but I want to really emphasize the importance of direct observation, just watching yourself for what you presently are in this moment and not running off into a fantasy about what you want to think you are or what you want to experience yourself as, but writing down what is happening in this immediate moment and working off that. That's very powerful for actually creating a sense of harmony and connection to yourself right now. Solitude and introspection is the next one. This is completely essential. There's no other way to really develop deep self-awareness without intentional solitude plus introspection. This is the ultimate combination for truly becoming self-aware. You cannot become deeply self-aware at your workplace talking to a bunch of people. Although you can learn fantastic things and notice things about yourself for sure, but you're not going to develop it at the level of depth that that I'm talking about really in this video, or that I'm trying to really discuss in this video. So spending time alone in quiet reflection can really help you to understand your own thoughts and emotions. I know, right? Like who would have guessed? Therapy and counseling. I would highly recommend buying books on psychotherapy. I'll recommend just a few right here. I'll recommend No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, and I'll recommend Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark by Robert Augustus Masters. Two fantastic books. There's also a book called The Self-Acceptance Project. I have it right here. I got it right here. This one's really good. The Self-Acceptance Project. It's edited by Tammy Simon, and it's really a collection of various psychotherapists and teachers, just all writing about unconditional self-acceptance, and really reading therapy is really good. Reading books written by therapists is really good, as well as actually going to a therapist and talking to them. And you gotta find yourself a really good therapist. There's a lot of shame around going to therapy in a lot of modern culture. And really, when you begin to read a lot of psychotherapy, you realize that therapy is not just for broken human beings who are emotionally dysfunctional, and that actually everyone needs a lot of therapy. Really, everyone, for the most part, is walking around with very deep-rooted emotional issues that they have no idea exist and have no idea how to confront, and are too scared to admit that they exist and too scared to confront them. Practically everyone. And when you get to a certain point in your development, that just becomes painfully obvious by the way a person walks, or when you see them fidgeting with something, and you see them being a little bit too anxious in the moment. You can see where that is stemming from just by looking at them and having empathy and feeling the sort of, just feeling out the present moment, feeling the texture of your experience and connecting with them. You can just kind of sense it. Not in a judgmental way, but it's just interesting to see that we live in a very emotionally unintelligent world. So therapy and counseling is extremely important. There's no shame in going. And actually, if you go, you probably have more courage than most people. Seeking feedback. So ask family, friends, loved ones, things like this. And make sure you're talking to people who act with integrity and they're not foolish. So people you trust, really, you can ask for feedback. And this can actually help you to gain more understanding about yourself, things like that, what they observe from you. And you want, oh my God, you want to talk to people who will give you a truthful answer and not judge you or shame you or try and get some moral high ground on you. You want to have a just very, very open and honest discussion going back and forth. You don't want to play games of any kind, and you want people to act with integrity. You don't want people who are going to try and manipulate you or push something on you or change you or judge you, things like that, judge you for your beliefs or judge you for the things you do or think or say, blah, blah, blah. You want people who can be open to you, actively listen, be receptive, actually respect you. I'm going to have an entire video on how to develop active listening and emotionally support people. So moving on, build self-compassion. Self-compassion is actually a skill that you have to do. I'm going to let you see all the practices very nicely right here. So building self-compassion is something that you have to do, really, in order to go to a certain level of depth in this work. Self-compassion is actually very difficult for many people to do. A lot of people will probably feel weird about it. I know I kind of did when I would first actually practice it. Really just generating a sense of love for yourself and allowing yourself to actually feel love for yourself in this moment, and like sitting there and intentionally generating it and like actually feeling it, and just being able to hold yourself like you're like a little newborn baby and not just judge yourself or whatever. Think of yourself as broken in any way, really. So when a hard emotion arises, you don't judge yourself for it. When a difficult thought arises, you don't judge yourself for it. You're able to accept the most difficult parts of yourself, really. So practicing self-compassion can help individuals better understand and accept their own thoughts and emotions, which leads to greater self-awareness. Practice self-reflection. Regularly take time to reflect on your own thoughts, emotions, instincts, behaviors, intuition, things like this. So regularly take time. You actually have to, schedule time in each day. If you wanted to weightlift and, get some serious muscles, you got to go to the gym like every day, 4 or 5 times a week minimum, really. If you want to, depends how much muscle you want. But if you want some serious muscle, you want to develop some serious skill, you have to do it very actively. It's not this very passive thing where you watch a YouTube video and then you get it. No, there's a lot of practical hands-on work, books to read as well, practices to do, things to observe about yourself, things to admit to yourself. That's really where the rubber meets the road. That's really where you gain a serious amount of traction with this work. And the last one is engaging in new experiences. This is an interesting one. Meeting new people, stepping outside your comfort zone, and really overall, just trying new things can help you to gain more self-awareness. And we have, the external world, and we have the internal world, the objective and the subjective. And really, we have comfort zones within both of these. So, you can get uncomfortable in the external world, and you can get uncomfortable exploring your internal world. There's things that are occurring inside of you that you have actually hidden from yourself for so long that you don't even know they exist, you've forgotten about them, but yet they still influence you. And it might be uncomfortable to even admit that to yourself, and it's going to be a lot more uncomfortable probably to actually venture off into those parts of yourself and actually explore them and being able to bring them to the light of day, bring them into awareness. So, go on a meditation retreat, travel to a new country, eat new food, meet new people, read different books that you would never usually read, take personality tests, watch various YouTube videos that you probably would never find yourself watching. Basically, break out of any routine you have, break out of any robotic pattern or just mechanical habit that you have, and be very honest that you're very stuck in your routines, very stuck in your ways, very stuck in what is secure. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's important to step out of that. And as corny as that sounds, I'm not trying to make it sound corny, like, get out of your comfort zone. Really getting out of your comfort zone, especially when it's the internal world, is something that absolutely no one does, takes seriously, or even knows exists. And it's something that only the most courageous people actually do. Move to a new city. So that's a very courageous thing to do. It's very difficult. That undermines a lot of your sense of security and a lot of your comfort. A lot of change is going to have to happen in a short period of time. That's not easy. And really, book a meditation retreat. Sit there in meditation for 8 hours a day. See what comes up. Just sit there. Sit for an hour in your room. See what comes up. See how much you hate your back when it's in pain. See how much you hate your frustration. See how much you hate yourself when you feel certain things, think certain things, experience certain things. How much agitation there is, how much frustration, worry, anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, sadness, loneliness, things like that. Notice a lot of the parts of yourself that you just want to move away from. And notice it on a very practical level, like you feel an emotion, you want to run away from it. That's really where the work begins. Turn towards yourself and keep turning towards yourself. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. But other than that, take it easy.